Hi, everyone. Um, I wanted to just go through the latest filing, but I wanted to cover a few other things as well, just quickly before I do that. Firstly, I have read about the choreographer for Bye 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 is now suing Sony for the sequence being used in Deadpool and Wolverine. I will be covering that case. So I'm going to do a separate video on the complaint that's in that case. At the moment, there's not much, which is expected, but this is something that I'm interested in. It's a related case, so I will be covering that. I did want to. I don't normally jump on the conspiracy theory side of this. I find it hilarious and entertaining when other content creators cover it, and I think they do a great job. And I tend to stick to the more legal stuff, but I couldn't let this one kind of go. Now I know that people have been. They looked at the story yesterday. Taylor Swift and Ashley Avignon were photographed together, and there was a lot of questioning. Oh, is it the timing? What's going on? Are they getting the story straight? I mean, none of this would actually surprise me, but it could be quite innocent. They've been friends for a long time. But then I was watching a video on TikTok from Katie and Casey, who I just adore, and she'd done a video about this story, and someone had basically commented on her video, and then she'd done another video where she had that person's comment, and she was like absolutely stunned by what they said. And basically it's the shade of the lipstick that Taylor Swift is wearing. So if I don't know how well I can zoom in. It's very red. Now, again, I don't know if this is true or not. It does not say where the lipstick's from, what shade it is, etc., etc. But I have looked into a little bit, and I do know it is one of her signature lipsticks. And people are now questioning, because of the name of it, is this a nod? Is this some kind of message to Blake Lively? Obviously, Blake Lively did that. Put that statement up where she was, declaring herself a voice for all women who've ever been abused, even though we don't want her. And then she put that dragon emoji at the end, which Ashley caught beautifully. But this, people are wondering if this is maybe a nod to that. Like, people thought that Blake Lively's dragon emoji was a kind of a message or a bat signal to Taylor Swift, and now people are wondering if this is a response. Now, I found the lip shade. This is John Lewis. John Lewis is like a British department store. Us Brits love this particular store. It's called Dragon Girl by NARS. And I don't normally, subscribe to conspiracy theories, but in this case, and knowing what they're like with their Easter eggs and their mind games, I gotta say, I find it quite a persuasive argument. Again, there's nothing that actually definitively says that this is the lipstick shade, but it does look like it. And we know that this is a brand and a shade that Taylor Swift does use. But everything, I don't know, the timing just does not. It just feels like it's too coincidental. But then I weigh that up with, are they friends though? Are they really friends? Because Blake Lively is not invited to the wedding. But then I end up going down a rabbit hole. But then I question myself, well, is she just not invited because Taylor Swift is worried she'll take authorship? I don't know. I don't know. Weird people with weird minds. I've also seen rumors as well that Lively and Reynolds are planning to move to the UK. I would just like to say, on behalf of Brits, we don't want you. And that's saying something, because right now we're in a situation where we are literally letting everyone come in. All kinds of people. You get on a boat, you you're brought straight into our country and welcomed with wide open arms. But I do not think that these two will be welcomed at all. So I despise the fact that they even have anything to do with Wrexham. I even more despise the fact that the government have grants that they give to multi-billion-dollar kind of film companies to say, hey, thanks for shooting a movie on in our land, because my taxes go into that, as is many other British people's tax. So I already resent them for coming over here and basically just taking money for doing not really much. I really don't want them living here, though. I don't want them living here. So yeah, I'm gonna have to leave the UK if that happens. Speaking of Deadpool and Wolverine, I am aware of the new lawsuit that Sony are being sued by the choreographer of the Bye 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 dance sequence for NSYNC. Years ago, I trained as a dancer. I can see the issue because they didn't really try to change it at all. It was almost identical to the original sequence, and then they dumped it in a film. Now I thought that they had at least sort out the rights like they had to do with songs and various things, but apparently not. So I will be covering this case because this actually appeals to me. So far we're only at the stage where the complaint's been filed. I'll do a separate video talking about that. It's not long at all, but I'm curious to see where that goes. And yeah, we'll follow that separately as a related case. And just before I do go into this new filing as well, I put something, I did a video, my last video this earlier, and it was quite personal about some of the bullying, cyber stalking, and various things I've had to go through since I had to deal with the subpoena. And I've had a few questions, so I wanted to kind of address it because I don't think I wasn't overly the most articulate because it's quite a difficult subject actually, and I've tried to just not face it really because it's been stressful. But I've had some really lovely messages. Thank you for that. I've had some people say that they've also experienced something similar, not by the same people, but they've had their own bad experiences of social media, the awful side of it. So I'm really sorry that you've been through that. Thank you for sharing it with me. But I've also had, because I know there's been some content creator drama, especially people asked if it was the same people who were involved in the drama that happened with Dana, with Ashley, with Ken's, etc. So I just want to clear that up. But no, it's not. It's not the same people. At this point, I don't want to sort of give names. If I say the names, absolutely you will know who these people are. I'm sure you follow them even and like their content. I'm not at a point where I want to do that because I'd rather that it just stopped. But as I said last night in my video, if it keeps happening, I will name them. I mean, so no, it's not the same people. It's not even really the same thing. It wasn't just a case of stirring up a bit of drama. It was taking very private, confidential information that I had trusted these people with and then distributing that amongst people, setting up private group chats and sharing all this information. It was information that was deeply personal, not just about myself, but about my children and my family that I trusted these people with. They also used that information to go through my family's social media accounts, including my children. They set up YouTube accounts and impersonated my family member, specifically in one case, my mother, on the day that she was grieving for my brother. And when I spoke to my former moderator in this case, who was one of the people who had access to that information, it was suggested that maybe it was my ex-husband. And I was open to that. But you know what? I was left for 5 months thinking and worrying that was the case, that a man who had tormented me for nearly a decade and destroyed everything in my life, my career, caused two of my two eldest children to try and commit suicide, nearly destroyed my family, nearly destroyed me personally. I was seriously terrified that he was behind it, that he was following me about, that he was interfering in things and setting up fake accounts, because this is the kind of thing he did. I realized it could not have been him, though. I realized it could not have been him, because when they set up another account, then 5 months later, whilst I was in a live stream with Omar and House of Chatter, so they had to have been in that live stream. And then they used it again 2 days later when I was in a live stream with Cassidy, and they had to have been in Cassidy's live stream as well to know that I was there. Because, like I say, nothing was advertised. That could only be people who knew the information, but also knew that I followed this case, that I followed Cassidy, that followed Cassidy themselves, and was in that live stream and saw me. Because otherwise, why would they have then logged into that account and gone into a live stream knowing I would see my own names, my middle name and my maiden surname? And all of this, like the fear of thinking, but they left me to think that this could have been my ex-husband, and caused me to kind of withdraw a little bit, stop putting out my ex threads, stop doing live streams, stop live streaming with other people for the most part, and just kind of doing pre-record videos on UK hours where I didn't have to face people in the moment that might pop up and intimidate me, or might be a name that puts the fear of God into me, because then I recognize it and I know someone is stalking me and trying to scare me, and it's working, by the way. So I wish I could say that it was just drama, but it wasn't. The drama part of it was that they were spreading lies about me or saying things out of context, mischaracterizing situations, and trying to put off other content creators from working with me. Some possibly successfully, others thankfully not. And they come to me and said, hey, this person has said this, this, and this. And I was given the chance then to say, hold on a minute, no, that's not true, actually, and here's the evidence. So last night I wanted to say, though, because I've not said it, I've kind of lived with that and dealt with it, and only really shared it with, obviously when it happened in Cassidy's live stream, I shared that with Cassidy and Lauren. Lauren was a moderator, so they are aware. But very few people know, other than the people who have been approached to join these secret group chats where they've shared information, slandered me, and so on and so forth. The people who either did join and then actually realized how bad it was, how many lines were being crossed, then left, or the people who declined to get involved at all. And they approached me and come to me and said, all this is happening, by the way. Are you aware of it? And I had my suspicions, but I had to keep in the back of my mind, this could well have been my husband, because my ex-husband, also did this stuff. So they were quite literally doing to me what my ex-husband did. They were setting up account profiles and, intimidating me and just making me think I was going crazy. And it was pretty awful. It was rather inhumane, but it is what it is. I'm not going to be intimidated. I will keep talking about this case. It matters to me. And, I have a lovely community, and I'm not going to just kind of walk away from that just because I've got some people who are just, absolutely vile people who unbelievably are, following this case as in support of Baldoni, in support of Wayfarer, crying out about the injustice that was done to Jen Abel, to Natasha Heath, but yet they're here doing this shit to me just because. Oh, I don't even know why, because maybe, it's all stupid. But I'm not going anywhere. So, and on that note, I am going to talk about this filing. But thank you for your support, though. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of glad I just said it, really. But for now, I won't be naming them. Anything else happens, I will be naming them. And that's that. Okay, so this is from Friedman's firm. So this is the opposition to the motion to compel that Blake Lively filed the other day. So we're just going to see what that says. Wayfarer Studios, it ends with this movie, and Tag, collectively the defendants. And Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz, Melissa Nathan, and Jennifer Abel, collectively the dismissed defendants. And that feels so good to read. Who were dismissed in the court's April 2nd ruling on defendant summary judgment motion, along with 10 of plaintiff's 13 causes of action. Respectfully submit this letter in opposition to Plaintiff Blake Lively's request for an order compelling them to identify dismissed defendants that will be appearing at trial to offer in-person testimony, and those whose testimony will be presented through deposition testimony. Plaintiff also seeks a limited extension of time to provide deposition designations for any party who elects not to appear at trial. Plaintiff relies on Rule 5A9 of the court's individual rules of civil practice, which requires the parties to identify in the proposed joint pretrial order a list of all trial witnesses indicating whether such witnesses will testify in person or by deposition. Plaintiff complains that defendant's initial witness list does not specify which of the dismissed defendants will appear live and which will appear by deposition. Plaintiff fails to note that her own individual witness list provided to defendants on March 20th, 2026 failed to comply with Rule 5A9, listing 45 witnesses without any indication of which will appear to testify in person. Well, of course it does. Of course she's done exactly the same thing, but she's going to complain about them doing it. Jesus. Defendant's initial witness list served on March 20th, 2026 denotes with an asterisk witnesses who are outside the court's subpoena power and therefore may appear by deposition. Right, well, that's where she's getting confused. Blake Lively has no idea, no concept of what it means when people are outside of subpoena power, and she just issues a subpoena anyway. Like, that's what she's done. That's what she did to me. Oh. In defendant's amended initial witness list served shortly after the summary judgment ruling, the newly dismissed defendants were among those whose names were marked with an asterisk. A footnote reserved defendant's right to present live testimony at trial from any of the marked witnesses should the witness agree to appear voluntarily. The initial witness list came immediately on the heels of the court's April 12th summary judgment ruling, which, in defendant's view, may have significantly changed the landscape of the trial. Nevertheless, at an April 4th meet and confer, plaintiff insisted that defendants immediately disclose whether the dismissed defendants would provide live testimony. Plaintiff again ignored her own witness list, which suffered from the same shortcomings she complains of here. This has got to be Ellen. I haven't looked at the name at the bottom yet, but this feels like it's Ellen. Okay. Defendant's counsel attempted to explain to plaintiff that they were still processing the impact of the court's summary judgment ruling, and as part of that process, defendants' pre-trial submissions, including their witness list, were being reviewed and modified to comport with the ruling. Counsel assured plaintiff that to avoid prejudice, deposition designations would be provided timely for each of the dismissed defendants, pending an imminent decision on whether they would appear at trial. Plaintiff, however, continued to demand that defendants immediately identify those witnesses who will appear at trial and those who will not. Plaintiff denies that the summary judgment motion ruling has any effect whatsoever on the scope of the issues to be tried or the relevant evidence they will present at trial. Accordingly, plaintiff has declined to substantially narrow her witness list, which identifies 41 witnesses, or her exhibit list, which stands at approximately 1,000 exhibits. Really? That seems like an awful lot. It was a lot for 13 causes of action. It feels like it really is overkill for 3 causes of action, and one of them may go today. Well, not literally today, but we know Tags are refiling their motion for summary judgment. They may win, and then there will only be 2. You normally see these on kind of, these amounts of exhibits and witnesses on huge class action type cases. That's absolutely crazy. Plaintiff does explain how defendant's failure to disclose whether, I think that's supposed to be does not. Plaintiff does not explain how defendant's failure to disclose whether the dismissed defendants will appear at trial in the initial witness list at this juncture prejudice plaintiff. Yeah, I think it's not. Plaintiff also fails to elaborate on why defendant's delay in identifying the witnesses who will appear in person might be prejudicial, while plaintiff's corresponding failure would not prejudice defendants. Of course. Sufficient time has now passed for defendants to complete the necessary assessment of the issues and evidence that will be relevant at trial. Accordingly, defendants will be serving an amended witness list reflecting that dismissed defendants Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Melissa Nathan will appear to provide in-person testimony, as their testimony remains relevant to refute plaintiff's false allegations of a smear campaign that purportedly orchestrated to smear Miss Lively. In contrast, dismissed defendants Stephen Sarowitz and Jennifer Abel will not appear in person but by deposition. With respect to other third-party witnesses who are outside the court's subpoena power, defendants are unable to predict whether they will agree to appear voluntarily. Designations have been provided, and, like plaintiff, defendants reserve the right to present their testimony at trial should they agree to appear voluntarily. Based on the foregoing, defendants respectfully request that the court deny plaintiff's request to compel disclosure of which witnesses will appear at trial and which will testify by deposition. Defendants' request for additional time to exchange witness lists is moot. And the judge did deny the motion to compel as moot. So, and it is Ellen. Of course it's Ellen. Okay, I'm just going to quickly have a look at these footnotes. On April 9th, 2026, so that's yesterday, plaintiff indicated she was adding dozens of new exhibits, including videos and other potentially voluminous materials. Plaintiff refused to share an estimated number of dozens of exhibits, and at the time of this filing, these exhibits have not been identified. So, roughly translated, for PR purposes, Blake Lively has got a hell of a lot of evidence, but won't tell anyone where it is, what it shows, what it proves, where it came from. That's how I'm reading that. And then plaintiff relies on a string of decisions which, according to plaintiff, established that for the purposes of trial testimony, the dismissed defendants remain parties until final judgment has been entered. None of the cases plaintiff cites hold that a dismissed party can be compelled to testify in person at trial if they are outside the geographical limits of Rule 45, much less that defendants are required to disclose who will appear in person at this juncture. Yeah, that's fair enough. One of the cited cases did not involve testimony at all. The other two involved depositions and not trial testimony. Oh my God. Well, that was entertaining. Okay, so yeah, Judge Lyman has denied that motion to compel. And we are due to get the motions for the pretrial motions order. That's due later today, as is TAG's renewed motion for summary judgment on that cause of action that they're still in for. So I'm going to keep a lookout for that. I'll probably wait for them actually, and then start my video series on the dance choreography case against Sony. Yeah, I think that's best. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Take care.